And away we go, episode 1235 of the Al Galdi podcast. It is Friday, January 9th, 2026. And in this unpredictable world in which we live, know that you can be certain of at least one thing. The Washington Commanders in their 2026 offseason will be releasing cornerback Marshon Lattimore. This already seemed to be a certainty due to him having zero guaranteed money left on his contract and due to him having played poorly for the Commanders over his 1.5 seasons with the team and due to him having suffered a season-ending torn ACL in the 38-14 loss to the Seattle Seahawks at Northwest Stadium on Sunday Night Football on November 2nd. But now we have this. Lattimore on Wednesday evening got arrested. He was arrested following a traffic stop in Lakewood, Ohio at 6:14 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. Was arrested on a possible charge of carrying a concealed weapon. The police report listed a 9mm Glock as evidence. Also listed a second possible charge of improperly handling firearms in a motor vehicle. A statement from the Commanders on Thursday afternoon, quote, "We have been made aware of the arrest and are gathering more information. We have informed the NFL League office and have no further comment at this time." End quote. Marshon Lattimore also was arrested in Ohio in March 2021, was initially charged with a felony for receiving a stolen firearm. The felony charge was later dismissed, but Lattimore pleaded guilty to carrying a concealed weapon, a misdemeanor. He received 1 year probation and a suspended 180-day jail sentence. Hey, innocent until proven guilty. But yeah, Marshon Lattimore not going to be here no more. Marshon Lattimore now is Marshon not going to be here no more. Hello and welcome to this Friday installment of the Al Galdi podcast. The Miami Dolphins, they on Thursday morning announced having fired head coach Mike McDaniel. The Washington Commanders, they should hire Mike McDaniel as offensive coordinator now. As in right now. Actually, yesterday would be even better. Yes, I know the situation isn't that simple. Mike McDaniel in this 2026 NFL coaching cycle might get a second NFL head coaching job, but therewith, McDaniel is a lot to like, a lot of strong ties to the Commanders. Also, we on Thursday evening had reports that the Commanders have requested permission to speak with Dallas Cowboys tight ends coach Lunda Wells for the Commanders offensive coordinator vacancy. A lot to take in right now. Next segment, and all 22 style deep dive on potential offensive coordinator candidates for the Commanders, as we'll speak with Commanders analyst Mark Bullock of Bullock's Film Room, which you can find at markbullock.substack.com. This for part 2 of our 2-part extravaganza on the Commanders' change at offensive coordinator, off them on Tuesday, parting with offensive coordinator Kliff Kingsbury, offensive line coach Bobby Johnson, and defensive coordinator Joe Witt Jr. Mark will discuss his realistic dream get for the Commanders at offensive coordinator. Yes, Mike McDaniel. Also, Mark will address how important NFL play calling experience is for the Commanders' hire at offensive coordinator, the possibility of the Commanders promoting from within for offensive coordinator, and why the shotgun/pistol versus under center debate that became such a thing with Kliff Kingsbury as offensive coordinator is overrated. By the way, reports on Thursday afternoon that Kliff Kingsbury has been requested to interview for the Baltimore Ravens head coaching vacancy and the Tennessee Titans head coaching vacancy. Kliff Kingsbury could go from being parted with by the Commanders as offensive coordinator to being hired as an NFL head coach. What an odd ordeal. Also on the show, lots more Commanders conversation, analysis of the state of the roster, off comments from General Manager Adam Peters and head coach Dan Quinn during their joint season-ending press conference on Monday evening, and I off comments from Adam Peters on Monday evening. We'll discuss the contract extension drama for receiver Terry McLaurin as a possible reason for the Commanders' disappointing 2025 season, where Peters went wrong at receiver, a lesson for Peters from the McLaurin drama that is perhaps being applied to contract extension negotiations with left tackle Laramie Tunsil, and more. Before we get to feedback, Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern was the deadline by which MLB teams and arbitration-eligible players needed to either agree to terms on contracts for the 2026 season or file competing arbitration figures. The lone player for the Washington Nationals filing for arbitration was starting pitcher Cade Cavalli. 2 players for the Baltimore Orioles filed for arbitration, starting pitcher Kyle Bradish and reliever Keegan Aiken. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi Galdi. You can email me, the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Lots of feedback on everything going on with the Commanders, including them parting with Kliff Kingsbury. Email from a great sponsor of this podcast, Dr. George Verghese, off our discussion on Tuesday's show, episode 1232, on the comments of Adam Peters and Dan Quinn on Monday evening on what went wrong for our team in its disappointing 2025 season and more. Writes the doctor, after listening to Tuesday's show, Josh Harris should tell Peters to offer the head coaching job to John Harbaugh. I'm tired of DQ and all of his spaces. Obviously, he can't hire the right people from the start. Thank you for that, Dr. Verghese. The heat is on Dan Quinn. His choice for Commanders defensive coordinator lasted for less than 2 seasons. His choice for Commanders offensive coordinator lasted for just 2 seasons. Whether Dan Quinn is the team's head coach beyond the 2026 season depends on whether he and Adam Peters get these coordinator hirings this offseason right. Email from Frank Radcliffe in Hitchin, England. Writes Frank, Dear Al, thanks again for a great show. In response to the potential rift between KK and AP, I suspect this is based on several grounds. Firstly, KK did not, in my opinion, fit the offensive scheme to the available personnel. He continued with a no-huddle offense when the team continued to struggle with false start penalties, which may have resulted due to the aforementioned lack of huddle. The Vikings game evidenced decisions to pass rather than run the ball, which was evident throughout KK's tenure. Furthermore, it appears that KK did not make the most of AP's free agent signings and draft picks, including the lack of use of Bill in a running back by committee situation with C-Rod that may have sealed KK's fate. Finally, the use of quarterback keepers was not only far too common, it threatened the career of JD5. HTTR/HTTC. Get Raheem Morrison for a start. Thank you for the email, Frank. It never ceases to amaze me how many Commanders fans are in England. A decent number of downloads for this podcast come from the United Kingdom. I get a lot of feedback from people in England. Mark Bullock, of course, is from England. He now lives in Sweden, but he's from England. The Commanders franchise, big-time representation in England. Also, the goal to go fail for the Commanders in their 31-0 loss at the Minnesota Vikings on December 7th has become this unforgivable sin by Kliff Kingsbury. So running back Chris Rodriguez Jr. on the Commanders' first offensive drive of that game had 4 carries for 31 yards. He was rolling. Commanders had a 2nd and goal at the 2, but Kingsbury then called 3 consecutive passing plays, each of which resulted in an incompletion. Kingsbury was wrong to do that. I said that. He admitted to that. People make mistakes, okay? He made a mistake. And it's worth remembering, but few do, that Jayden Daniels on the first of the plays had offensive tackle Brandon Coleman open, but did not throw to him. And the last of the plays resulted in a drop by receiver Deebo Samuel Sr. But these 2 items are rarely brought up. What's also rarely brought up is that the Commanders for the 2025 regular season were number 4 in the NFL in red zone touchdown scoring percentage. The idea that Kingsbury overall was bad in the red zone is wrong. Fake news. Number 4 in the NFL and red zone touchdown scoring percentage. Frank made an interesting point about all of the Commanders' false start penalties perhaps being a function of the high no-huddle usage. Maybe. The Commanders for the 2025 regular season were dead last in the NFL in fewest false start penalties, 33. Just awful. And I do think it's true that Kliff Kingsbury at times called design runs for Jayden Daniels that should not have been called. There are 3 types of quarterback runs: scrambles, option runs, and design runs. What I'm talking about here are design runs. Do you remember the Commanders' 27-10 win at the Los Angeles Chargers on October 5th? Jayden Daniels in that game returned from a 2-game absence caused by a left knee injury. Kingsbury on the Commanders' 2nd offensive snap of the game called a design run for Daniels, who lost 2 yards on the play. I did not get that at all. I mean, dude, the guy is just coming back from a left knee injury. Why call a design run like that so soon. So Kliff Kingsbury as Commanders offensive coordinator was not perfect. He made mistakes, but his overall body of work as Commanders offensive coordinator to me was good. Hey, if you happen to be listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can write a review of the podcast saying that you like it. The review can be just a sentence or two, doesn't have to be long, but these reviews do help out the podcast a lot. Thank you very much for doing them. We welcome back to the Al Galdi podcast Washington Commanders analyst Mark Bullock for part two of a two-part conversation of the team on Tuesday parting with offensive coordinator Kliff Kingsbury and also offensive line coach Bobby Johnson and defensive coordinator Joe Wood Jr. We on Thursday's show, episode 1234, spoke with Mark about why the Commanders parted with Kingsbury. We right now get into what now for the Commanders at offensive coordinator. Mark Bullock is exceptional at talking Commanders from an X's and O's standpoint. He does tremendous Commanders all 22 breakdowns. You could read his work on his Substack, Bullock's Film Room, which you can find at markbullock.substack.com. Mark on his Substack on Wednesday morning put up a really good piece on why the Commanders parted with Kliff Kingsbury, the implications of the team parting with him, and who could be the team's next offensive coordinator. Headline quote, Commanders fire OC Kliff Kingsbury. Who might be next? End quote. Mark is written for The Athletic and for The Washington Post. Also, he is a Commanders fan. You could follow Mark on X at Mark Bullock NFL. So, General Manager Adam Peters and head coach Dan Quinn parting with Kliff Kingsbury is a risk. He over his 2 seasons as the team's offensive coordinator did a good job. The QB1, Jaden Daniels, clearly very much like working with Kingsbury. There's no guarantee that the Commanders in Kingsbury's replacement will do better than Kingsbury, but of course, they could, and hopefully they will. You in your Substack piece on the Commanders parting with Kingsbury went through a bunch of potential offensive coordinator candidates. Among them, now former Miami Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel, who the Dolphins on Thursday morning announced as having fired. Miami Dolphins quarterbacks coach and passing game coordinator Darrell Bevell. Miami Dolphins senior game pass game coordinator Bobby Slowick. Miami Dolphins associate head coach and running backs coach Eric Studesville. San Francisco 49ers offensive coordinator Clay Kubiak. Los Angeles Rams offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur, and Jacksonville Jaguars offensive coordinator Grant Udinski. Now, regarding Mike McDaniel, he is a very smart offensive coach. He has strong ties to Adam Peters and Dan Quinn. For whatever it's worth, McDaniel was an offensive assistant for the Redskins for the 2011 through 2013 seasons, including being the Skins receivers coach for the 2013 season. I know you like Mike McDaniel a lot. Is he, in fact, your realistic dream get for the Commanders at offensive coordinator?
If he doesn't want a head coaching job, yeah, absolutely. That I think that's the top candidate that they could possibly hope for at this point. And I mentioned to you a few months ago, I thought the one thing I wonder is if Adam Peters is sitting there and Mike McDaniel becomes available, trying to pair that up with Jaden Daniels as a head coaching option would, given that Dan Quinn has now just fired both of his coordinators, and you have to wonder about it. But I don't think we're getting down that path anyway. Certainly not right now. So yeah, McDaniel would probably be the ideal guy. The one that would be really intriguing would be Jaguars offensive coordinator Grant. I think it's Udinski, or I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. But he's not directly in the Shanahan-McVay tree, but he spent a few years under Kevin O'Connell with the Vikings after O'Connell left McVay to take that job. And now he's working under Liam Cohen, who's another Sean McVay disciple. So he's well-versed in that system. He is the offensive coordinator, so I'm not sure how you'd be able to promote him, but he's not calling plays because Liam Cohen's calling plays for Jacksonville. So, and Udinski's the kind of the young up-and-comer that's the next Sean McVay sort of thing. That's the label that he's got on him, and that would be one that would be intriguing if you wanted to go with an inexperienced play caller. But otherwise, McDaniel would probably be the dream scenario, I guess.
There is a humility here that I think we all need to have when it comes to who the Commanders should hire as offensive coordinator, and that humility is rooted in There's a lot that we don't know. Like we could say this guy's great or that guy's bad, but there's just a lot that we don't know about NFL assistant coaches. That said, I do find Klay Kubiak to be interesting. However, he has never been an NFL play caller. How important should previous NFL play calling experience be in this offensive coordinator search for the Commanders?
For me personally, I'd be willing to take a chance on that kind of guy. For Dan Quinn going into a critical year 3 where he needs his offense and his defense to play really well to keep his job, I would imagine, given how most defensive-minded or just how most NFL coaches tend to lean more towards the safer choices, I would imagine he leans more towards a safer choice that's more experienced with the play calling. So I don't know how realistic a Kubiak, a Klay Kubiak is, or an Odinsky, or any of those Shanahan guys that haven't called plays yet. I don't know how realistic that is. I would guess maybe a Bobby Slowick that had a chance to call plays with the Texans and actually interviewed for the job that Dan Quinn currently has. Whether he'd be more in line with what DQ would want, with a little bit of experience, but still young enough to connect with younger players and still in that Shanahan system, whether that would be more of a realistic option.
The Commanders promoting from within for offensive coordinator probably would not go over super well with Commanders fans, but what the team does at offensive coordinator should not be based on fan reaction. The team needs to do what it truly thinks is right. There would seem to be 3 viable internal candidates for offensive coordinator: assistant head coach / offensive pass game coordinator Brian Johnson, run game coordinator / running backs coach Anthony Lynn, and assistant quarterbacks coach David Blough. Blough has served as the team's quarterbacks coach since Davita Pritchard left to become Stanford's head coach. Stanford on November 28th announced having hired Pritchard as head coach. And Blough is coming up for the Detroit Lions offensive coordinator vacancy. The Lions on Tuesday evening announced having fired offensive coordinator John Morton. NFL insider Ian Rappaport of NFL Network, in a post on X on Tuesday evening, had this quote: "The Lions have started off their OC search with an intriguing name, David Blough, a former Detroit QB. Blough was assistant QB's coach with the Commanders, but did the QB coach job after Davita Pritchard left. A sneaky hot name." End quote. Two-part question. A, how likely is it that the Commanders promote from within for offensive coordinator? B, regarding David Blough, what do you think of him as a rising offensive assistant who, in order to keep, the team promotes to offensive coordinator?
So, yeah, on the first part about promoting from within, like Dan Quinn made this whole point about when he was first hired of something he learned from his time in Atlanta was he didn't have a succession plan. When Kyle Shanahan left, he let Shanahan take LaFleur and McDaniel and all those guys with him to San Francisco, and he had to hire new staff, and that's one of the big reasons why he failed. So he wanted to bring in these different people and gel a staff together and have that succession plan, and that's presumably what Brian Johnson's role was going to be. Is Kliff Kingsbury gets hired away after some success and he takes over. But when you end up firing Kliff Kingsbury or mutually parting ways, however you want to call it, when you end up moving on from Kliff Kingsbury and the reason you want to move on from him is you want to change the system, suddenly the guys you have in-house that are running the current system are no longer the candidates you want because you want to change the system. Now, could Brian Johnson run a different system? Sure, like Brian Johnson came from a different system, but the system he came from was not the Shanahan system. And one of the criticisms about Brian Johnson when he was in Philadelphia was he didn't run the ball enough. So are you going to go from one guy that you're like, hey, we want you to run the ball more? No, I don't want to do that. Okay, you're out. Let's get the next guy in. Hey, Brian Johnson, you want to run the ball more, please? Well, I didn't do that in Philly, so why am I going to do that here? So that feels like that's not going to be likely. I think the one guy on staff that ticks the boxes of an experienced play caller and comes from a Shanahan system is Anthony Lynn. But I kind of feel like at this point in Anthony Lynn's career, he's not really the play caller type at this point. He had his chance as a play caller. He got to being a head coach, and now he's kind of fallen back into the ranks where he's, the run game coordinator and a running backs coach. And I think he's very good at what he does, but I don't know if he's the guy you want to be elevating to that role now. On David Blough specifically, like, it's hard to know when you're not inside the building how much of an influence he has. Like, what you hear is he's a really bright mind, and obviously if Detroit are trying to pull him away, like they obviously rate him highly, and you hear the reports that people around the league rate him highly. But how much can we on the outside know that an assistant quarterbacks coach does on a day-to-day basis with the offense? Like, that's there's two risks involved there for promoting a guy like David Blough. One, he's going from assistant quarterback coach to offensive coordinator. He's never called plays before. He's never had to hire a staff before. Like, who's he going to have around him? Are you going to be able to help him hire that staff? What kind of systems are you going to run? And how well is he going to be able to call plays and sequence plays? So that's one big risk. The other big risk is if he comes in and does amazing, and you absolutely nail that hire, and he is the next Sean McVay, then in a year's time, like, someone's going to want to hire him away as the head coach, and then Adam Peters has a decision to make of, do we want to go through all this again with Jaden Daniels, or do we want to just keep David Blough and get rid of Dan Quinn? So the hiring that young, bright offensive mind could be a lose-lose situation where either he doesn't work because he's not called plays before, and it kind of stumbles and doesn't work, in which case Dan Quinn loses his job, or it works really well and you want to keep the guy for continuity, and Dan Quinn loses his job anyway. So I kind of feel like that, while I think from an outside perspective that would be the best option for the organization, is to take a shot on one of those young, hot, upcoming guys, I'm not sure that's the path that Dan Quinn's going to go down.
This talk of the Commanders potentially hiring Brian Daboll as offensive coordinator. The New York Giants on November 12th announced having fired Daboll as head coach. He did have a really good run as Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator, January 2018 to January 2022. What do you make of Daboll as potentially being Commanders offensive coordinator?
I could see it because there's links, and the NFL is all about links. And Dan Quinn coached with Daboll for a few years in the Jets back in the mid 2000s. Like, they were on different sides of the ball, but they're on the same coaching staff. And Adam Peters actually has a link to him as well, where Peters was a scout in New England when Daboll was the wide receivers coach there. So when both Peters and Quinn have a link to the guy, you have to think that that's certainly an option that's on the table. I don't know. I don't know about that one. Daboll's offense has always been something I've respected, but it did morph into something that wasn't great in New York. Part of that is down to the fact that Daniel Jones was the running it for a lot of the time. But then you see Daniel Jones go to Shane Steichen, and suddenly Daniel Jones looks like an MVP candidate. And it's like, well, was Daboll forcing a bad system on him, or did he just not fit the system? Like, what's going on there? So there'd be questions to answer about that. I could see it because of the links, but I don't think it would be my first choice.
Much more with Mark Bullock in moments. Nova Fireplace and Stove. It is Northern Virginia's go-to expert for fireplaces. Transform the look and feel of your home and increase its value by visiting Nova Fireplace and Stove in Woodbridge, Virginia, or by visiting NovaFireplaceandStove.com, and make sure that you mention that Al Galdi sent you for $25 off any service. Nova Fireplace and Stove will make your fireplace elite. And here's what else Nova Fireplace and Stove offers: gas fireplace service and repair, chimney cleaning and brickwork repair, generator installation, panel replacements, and water heater repairs, smoke detectors, security lights, and more. Nova Fireplace and Stove is a family-owned, fully licensed and insured company with over-the-top credentials, gas and electrical master's licenses, a Class A contractor's license, and a long list of 5-star reviews to back all of this up. Every job includes a free in-home estimate, and for listeners of the Al Galdi podcast, Nova Fireplace and Stove is offering $25 off any service. Just mention that Al Galdi sent you. Nova Fireplace and Stove only works in Northern Virginia and thus knows the homes, the codes, and the people. Your satisfaction is 100% guaranteed. Nova Fireplace and Stove in Woodbridge, Virginia, or NovaFireplaceandStove.com, and make sure that you mention that Al Galdi sent you for $25 off any service. We're talking with Commanders analyst Mark Bullock of Bullock's Film Room, which you can find at markbullock.substack.com. Bottom lining this, to me, I don't see why the Commanders would part with Kliff Kingsbury and not go with a Shanahan-style offense. Like, if you're going to willingly get away from an offense that has worked well for you, the idea is to go with an offense that will do better for you. And the Shanahan-style offense is all the rage in the NFL. If you look at the ranking of NFL teams in total offense in terms of DVOA for the 2025 regular season, 4 of the top 10 teams run Shanahan-style offenses. The Los Angeles Rams, number 1. The San Francisco 49ers, number 2. The Green Bay Packers, number 6. The Seattle Seahawks, number 10. From an X's and O's standpoint, what makes the Shanahan-style offense so effective?
So the schemes are all around the NFL, right? Like everyone can run a wide zone run scheme. Everyone can run inside zone. Everyone can run play action passes. Everyone can run the passing plays that they run. What the Shanahan schemes and what the Shanahan guys do so well is how they sequence it all together and they layer things on top of each other. So you have the wide zone that you show one look of the wide zone, and that has 5 different plays off of it. So you can run the wide zone one way, you can run a bootleg off of that, you can run a drop back play action pass off of that same look, you can run a screen off of that same look, and then you can go back and show a different look and go run a wide zone again, and then again you can run a bootleg off of that, you can run a screen off of that, you can run a drop back play action pass off of it. And that's before you even get into just a drop back passing game. You have all these different layers of different run schemes, different versions of wide zone, inside zone that all complement each other really well. And then you have the layering, as I say, of the play action. And that's what makes things so difficult for defenses to keep up, because it all looks the same and it all blends together. And there's so many different things that they can do off of the same look. And they will, it's the layering and it's the sequencing of, they will call constantly throughout the game. Even if runs aren't working, they will call the run plays because they know that the benefit of that is going to come back to them later in the game, where either the run plays will eventually start working or they'll hit the play actions off of them. And those will, because you're committed to the run, the linebackers have to commit to those play action, to biting up on those runs, and that's going to open up the play action game behind them. So that's the beauty of that Shanahan system. It is, like, anyone can run the plays, but it's the way that they sequence them, it's the way that they layer them. Presumably, it's the way they teach them as well. And it all just knits together so nicely that you can feel the rhythm of the game so nicely when you're watching a Shanahan system. You can feel, oh yeah, I saw this formation and this motion earlier in the game, and it's going to look exactly like the same run that they ran at that time, but they're going to run a play action off of it and they're going to rip a 20-yard gain off of it. So that's the beauty of that system. And nobody else does it quite as well as what, Shanahan and that tree of coaches do.
I did want to ask you about this debate of shotgun/pistol versus under center. A lot of criticism for Kliff Kingsbury from Commanders fans and media members for him not having Jayden Daniels operate under center more. The overwhelming majority of his snaps, of course, have come from the shotgun formation or pistol formation. And it is true that teams with the highest under center rates for the 2025 regular season all did well offensively. The top 7 teams in under center rate for the 2025 regular season per Sharp Football Analysis: the Los Angeles Rams, the Seattle Seahawks, the Buffalo Bills, the Detroit Lions, the Chicago Bears, the San Francisco 49ers, and the New England Patriots. Each team finished in the top 10 in the NFL in total offense in terms of DVOA for the 2025 regular season. That said, that is this season. This has not been the case for every season for years now. And to me, a team should do what its quarterback is most comfortable doing. That to me is why Kliff Kingsbury had Jayden Daniels in shotgun/pistol so much. That's what Daniels knows best and is most comfortable with. Kingsbury's final press conference as Commanders offensive coordinator was a pre-practice press conference on New Year's Day. We, during that presser, had this exchange between Commanders insider John Keim of ESPN and Kingsbury.
To Ben's point about the style of offense, you were doing more under center lately. Is that something for Jayden? Is that a big deal to help him maybe grow as a quarterback? Is that something you want to incorporate more with him? Does that get a little bit overstated?
Yeah, I have a different philosophy. I mean, we've been more with Josh, obviously, and Marcus. There's more of a comfort level, but I'm not of that where you have to be under a certain amount of times. have never bought into that.
Okay, and Kliff Kingsbury took some heat for that response. I find this debate of shotgun/pistol versus under center to be way overrated and to be part of the hypercriticism of Kliff Kingsbury. An offensive play caller should do what his quarterback is comfortable doing. But what say you about all of this?
I'm very much on the same page as you. I think it's definitely been blown out of proportion. Yes, there are studies that show that play action stuff works best when you run stuff from under center, and play action does work best because a run fake from under center where the quarterback's turning his back to the defense and faking the handoff and then dropping back to pass takes a lot longer, and when it takes a lot longer, the linebackers have to respect that run. They have to bite up more, and that creates more of a separation between where the linebackers are and where the safeties are, and that opens up that gap. So to run that kind of play action style offense, yes, it makes sense to get under center and do that. But there's a lot of different ways to run an offense. You don't like Kingsbury has never been a play action kind of guy. That's not been his style. But you can do things in different ways. His preferred way is more to do the RPO kind of thing, where instead of trusting that those linebackers are going to bite up and the quarterback has to turn his back to the defense, you get in the gun, you hold the ball out to the running back, and the running back has the chance to actually take the ball. And this way, you're guaranteeing. In theory, you're guaranteeing that you're right because you read a linebacker, and if that linebacker bites up on the run, you pull the ball and you throw the ball behind him into the space that he's vacated. And if that linebacker holds his space and takes away that pass, then he's no longer in the run fit, and you get the benefit of that in the run game. So that's the kind of way that Kingsbury operates, and logically, just like that does make sense. Like it's just a very different philosophy. Can you get under center more? Sure. But I think it is very much a thing that is preference based for the quarterback. Now you can say, like people have talked to me this offseason or this season about, Ben Johnson spent the whole offseason putting Caleb Williams under center when he was a shotgun quarterback in college. And yeah, like that worked out. But if you listen to what Ben Johnson said in the offseason, it's we're going to try him there, we're going to start him there, and we're going to see how he does. And if he gets comfortable with it, then great. If he doesn't, then we might have to try something different. And he got comfortable with it, and that's great. And maybe that's what a new offensive coordinator is going to have to go through with Jaden Daniels here. But, if he's not comfortable under center, why would you force him to be under center? Why would you force him to do stuff he's not comfortable with? And again, you can take that hard-nosed style of it's my way or the highway, but is that the best way to get the best out of your all-star quarterback? I don't know. So yeah, I think it is very much blown out of proportion. Yes, a good chunk of the best teams in the NFL and the best offenses in the NFL right now are guys that go under center and run play action and do that kind of thing. But that's because the vast majority of the best offenses in the NFL are Shanahan tree or McVay tree guys that operate in that style. I think this time last year, nobody was complaining that they were in the shotgun the entire time, and they were one of the top 5 offenses in the league, and they were averaging 30 points a game. Nobody cared then. I think it's a different style to what people are used to seeing in the NFL. And when it doesn't work, this is not how I'm used to seeing it. So that I think that's all it is. And I think it is 100% with you. I think it's completely blown out of proportion.
I actually think that a lot of this is people, fans and media members on X, see a chart of which teams go under center the most and see that those teams have really good offenses this season, and then just presume that the going under center so much is a major reason for the teams having the good offenses. It is the classic causation versus correlation.
One of the best offenses in NFL history was Tom Brady in the gun with, a million slot receivers spread out, and running empty. Like that they put up 50 touchdowns that year. It was ridiculous. Like if you spend the whole offseason where you're practicing in the gun, all of your runs are congested and set to be targeted with the angles and stuff based on the quarterback being in the gun and everything hitting quicker. If you suddenly put everyone under center, all the offensive line's angles are completely thrown off. and that you have to readjust everyone's angles in there and how you want them to block things. You can't do that mid-season. It's insane. You're 100% right. It is definitely just, we've seen the chart and you go, oh yeah, those top three offenses are all under center. Why aren't we doing that? And it's like, there's reasons. You weren't complaining last year when they were the top offense in the league.
Absolutely not. Commanders analyst Mark Bullock of Bullock's Film Room, which you can find at markbullock.substack.com. Mark, thanks, and we'll talk soon.
Of course, talk soon.
All right, hey, if you have a case, contact the NACE Law Group, accident and injury lawyers. If you feel that you've been wronged, if you think that you've been wronged but aren't sure, contact the NACE Law Group, accident and injury lawyers, and mention that Al Galdi sent you. You could call 202-902-7611. You could also visit Washington, D.C., injurylawyers.com, and submit for a free, no-obligation case review. The NACE Law Group features compassionate lawyers and zealous advocates for its clients, led by the great Chris Nace and founded in 1979. The NACE Law Group is a Washington, D.C.-based family law firm that handles medical malpractice, personal injury, birth injury, legal malpractice, and consumer protection cases, offering aggressive advocacy for victims in Washington, D.C. and West Virginia. The NACE Law Group is outstanding. It will fight for you and your family. The NACE Law Group has recovered millions of dollars for the sick and injured. If you have a case, contact the NACE Law Group. Call 202-902-7611 or visit Washington, D.C., injurylawyers.com and tell the NACE Law Group that Al Galdi sent you. The NACE Law Group, accident and injury lawyers. So the Washington Commanders are set to have a lot of salary cap space for the NFL's 2026-2027 league year, which gets going on March 11th. The Commanders, per Spotrac, are projected to have the sixth most cap space in the NFL for the upcoming league year, $89.847 million. However, a lot of that has to do with the team for a third consecutive offseason having a ton of free agents. The following Commanders offensive players are set to be unrestricted free agents in the 2026 offseason. Quarterbacks Marcus Mariota, Josh Johnson, and Jeff Driscoll. Receivers Deebo Samuel Sr., Noah Brown, Treylon Burks, and Chris Moore. Tight end Zach Ertz, running backs Austin Eckler, Jeremy McNichols, and Chase Edmonds, and offensive linemen Chris Paul, Andrew Wiley, Trent Scott, and George Fant. The following Commanders defensive players are set to be unrestricted free agents in the 2026 offseason. Interior defensive linemen Eddie Goldman, Shai Tuttle, and Sheldon Day. Linebacker Bobby Wagner. Edge defenders Dietrich Wise Jr., Von Miller, Jacob Martin, Preston Smith, Drake Jackson, and Jalen Holmes, and cornerbacks Jonathan Jones, Noah Igbenogany, and Antonio Hamilton Sr. The following Commanders special team specialist is set to be an unrestricted free agent in the 2026 offseason, punter Tress Way, and running back Chris Rodriguez Jr. and kicker Jake Moody. They are set to be restricted free agents in the 2026 offseason. You got all of that. The Commanders, for a third time in 3 offseasons with Adam Peters as general manager, have a ton of free agents. By the way, I mentioned Josh Johnson. Not that this matters at this point, but do you know that he, for the 24-17 win at the Philadelphia Eagles this past Sunday to conclude our team going 5-12 in the NFL's 2025 regular season, had a total QBR per ESPN of 89.4. I was stunned when I saw that his total QBR for the game came out that high. QBR is on a scale of 0 to 100. 50 is average. A total QBR of 89.4 is outstanding. I mean, Johnson in the game did some good things, no doubt, but I did not see a total QBR of 89.4 coming. He, for the 30-23 loss to the Dallas Cowboys at Northwest Stadium on Christmas afternoon, had a total QBR of just 21.4, despite having a yards per pass attempt of 8.61, which is great, and despite having a yards per completion of 13.2, which is great. He, for this season-ending win at the Eagles, had a total QBR of 89.4. despite having a yards per pass attempt of just 5.95, which is bad, and despite having a yards per completion of just 9.36, which is bad. Very odd. Anyway, the Commanders in going 5-12 in the 2025 regular season, of course, got hammered by injury, but what's also true is that the roster ended up not being as good as we thought/hoped. Both of these things are true. Yes, the injuries, but also yes, the roster not as good as we thought/hoped. During the joint season-ending press conference for General Manager Adam Peters and head coach Dan Quinn on Monday evening, had this exchange between David Aldridge of The Athletic and Adam Peters.
Adam, what do you think needs to be fixed on this roster?
Fixed. I think the health played a big part. Certainly, it wasn't even close to the only part. But I think starting with a healthy team and really staying healthy is a big deal. But I know there's, I feel really good at some spots, but there's certainly a few spots where we can improve and get young, really, fast, exciting, explosive talent, and that's what we're doing right now. We're working on the draft and got a set of draft meetings coming up next week, which I'm really, really excited about. Got the scouts all showing us their reports and identifying some guys. We have a high pick, which is something that you don't really want if it's your own pick, but we're going to take advantage of that and try to find a young, explosive playmaker, wherever that may be.
All right, and Adam Peters said young. That is a key word with this team, young. The 2025 Commanders, as you may have heard, were old. If you look at NFL teams' initial 53-man rosters for the 2025 season, the Commanders had the oldest with an average age of 28.09. This is per research by Jimmy Kempski of PhillyVoice.com in a piece that came out this past August 26th. We on Monday evening had this exchange between Commanders insider Liam Griffin of the Washington Times and Adam Peters.
For Adam, you guys were the oldest team in the league by a snap-weighted basis this year, and you're coming into a season with kind of limited draft capital. So how do you go about, returning the 30 pending free agents and getting younger while trying to maintain a sense of continuity?
Yeah, I think that's something that's been talked about a lot, and I think fairly in a lot of aspects. But, I think you're always trying to get younger and faster, and I think that'll be a big emphasis for us this offseason.
Okay, so Adam Peters not shying away from the Commanders needing to get younger and faster. The roster needs to be better. Adam Peters, when he became Commanders GM in January 2024, took over a roster that was really bad. We get that. It takes time to build up an NFL roster. We get that. But the clock on having a star quarterback on a rookie contract is ticking. Jaden Daniels has just one season left until he is contract extension eligible in the 2027 offseason. There is urgency to get this roster better to properly capitalize on having Daniels on a rookie contract. We on Monday evening had this exchange between Donna Hopkins of Pro Football Plus and Dan Quinn, and then we'll hear Adam Peters chime in.
This is for both of you all. When you look at depth across the team this year, do you feel like in each area you had it? And if not, what do you think you needed most in preparing for 2026?
Yeah, Don, it's a good question. It's something that you're thinking about constantly. And even as that shifts, like offensive line, we really had our most depth. And even that was challenged here at the end of the season with some different roster change-ups. So with the addition of the practice squad and allowing that to be, that is a bigger piece than it's ever been. And some veteran, some not, but developing within is a really big piece. We'll continue to dig in hard on that. As developmental coaches, that's our job, to take them to the next spot, take them to the next level. And we were just talking about some of the players that we have so much belief in. It is helping them get to that next spot. And so as depth goes, you got to dig in, you got to find where you're vulnerable, where you got to keep developing people, what would be the contingency plan if this happened this week. So that's really where like the start of the week goes with Adam and I on Monday after we get done through the injury report, what would change, what would be the same. And this year we had far too many of those conversations about this is how we're going to go and this is how we'll play it. But it also came from that, some guys that maybe we wouldn't have known as much about, and how would it go and what it would look like. And so when called upon, how would they deliver? And, as we're going through it, it's difficult at times, but having that depth piece is a big deal, and it's developmental. It's taking people to the next space most often.
Yeah, it was certainly challenged our depth this whole year, and I would say just a great job by our personnel staff, because every Monday was a challenge in getting the guys in that we could just to play. But then certainly you got to think about, where do you have depth for guys that are ready to play and contribute? Where are you using that depth for guys on the practice squad that you want to develop and continue to, they may not be quite ready to play yet. And so, learning to find that balance and at every position is something we're always constantly trying to get better at. But yeah, we were certainly challenged this year, and I think, finding the balance of getting enough players that when you're really decimated at a position to get out and get you out of a game till those guys get back, that's certainly something we're going to look into.
I have called what the Commanders have in Jayden Daniels the holy grail of the NFL, the superstar quarterback on a rookie contract. Well, time is moving quickly with the holy grail. This season was a wasted season with the holy grail. Next season cannot be a second consecutive wasted season with the holy grail. And hopefully the Commanders next season are not mangled by horrendous injury luck. But what happened with the Commanders this season actually is familiar to Adam Peters. He worked for the San Francisco 49ers January 2017 to January 2024. He was their vice president of player personnel January 2017 to February 2021. He was their assistant general manager February 2021 to January 2024. The Niners have had injury problems for years, but the Niners in recent years have won 2 NFC championships, those for the 2019 and 2023 seasons. The Niners followed each season with an injury-plagued, disappointing season, the 2020 and 2024 seasons. Peters was with the Niners for their drop-off from the 2019 season to the 2020 season, and for their rebound in the 2021 season. The Niners advanced to the NFC Championship game in the 2021 season, and then again in the 2022 season, and then won the NFC Championship game in the 2023 season. We on Monday evening had this exchange between Zach Peerless of CBS Sports and Adam Peters.
This is for Adam. This is going back a couple years for you, but you were with the 49ers in kind of an eerily similar spot where you had a breakthrough year. Then next year there were some injuries kind of across the board, kind of fell back, and then you guys got right back to it. Does this situation remind you at all of that one, and what lessons did you learn of being able to build and have that roster right back after kind of that one down year following the breakthrough?
Yeah, first of all, I hope so. I hope that happens. And those things, I mean, I remember that year vividly, and it's a nightmare, when you have these certain games like we had in Green Bay, or we had that in that year in New York, where it was like carnage, and, it's really hard to bounce back. But I think, the lessons are, you look into everything. You look into, why the guys got hurt. Sometimes they got hurt because it's just a freak injury. Sometimes they got hurt because we didn't do a good enough job load managing or getting them warmed up or whatever it is. So you can look into all that. I have great belief in our health and performance team. They do a really good job. They have a ton of care for our players and really appreciate that. But you look into that. You look into, the type of players you bring in, their injury histories moving forward. You really dig into that. A lot of the times, the past injury history dictates kind of their future injury history. So that's a big piece of it. But really, what I'm proud of this year, and I think that year as well, that was a little more challenging because it was a COVID year, and we ended up having to move to Arizona for a month. But it really tests your resolve, and it tests your what we call brotherhood. And what was cool to see today, we met with a lot of players today on the checkout process, and really tip my cap to DQ here, because a lot of them, despite the the poor results, everybody really still believed in us and this team and what we're doing and the direction we're going. So I think that's something that you can really lean on and say, okay, we can dig into this more and bank on that we're going to have a little bit better luck with that next year and continue to add healthy pieces and get those guys that we lost back, which is a big deal too. We get a lot of those guys back, which will really make us look a lot different.
You could tell from what Adam Peters said on Monday evening that he does believe that injuries were a major reason, maybe the number one reason for the Commanders' disappointing 2025 season. And I would say that sentiment is correct. Now, in the macho world of the NFL, Peters can't say that injuries were a major reason, maybe the number one reason for the Commanders' disappointing 2025 season. He'd get killed for saying that, but he would not be wrong in saying that. Like, that to me is true. Injuries were the number one reason for the Commanders' disappointing 2025 season, but that doesn't mean that the roster doesn't need to be better. The Commanders need significant improvement at the following positions: receiver, tight end, edge defender, interior defensive lineman, linebacker, cornerback, and safety. Just those positions. The roster needs to be better. Adam Peters has a lot of work to do, and he knows that. Now, what about the draft? The Commanders in the 2026 NFL Draft have just 6 picks, including just 2 picks over the first 4 rounds. The number 7 overall pick, a 3rd-round pick, a 5th-round pick, 2 6th-round picks, and a 7th-round pick. We on Monday evening had this exchange between Commanders insider J.P. Finley of NBC4 and Adam Peters.
Adam, for you, going into this draft with just 2 picks Thursday, Friday night, how does that impact how you approach free agency, whether it's more aggressive or a different approach than perhaps these last few seasons?
I think you always want to look at the overall landscape with the draft and free agency and understand where the strengths and the weaknesses are and use those to your advantage in terms of where you're going to really invest in one or the other. Obviously, free agency comes first, and then I wish it was the other way around where you draft first and you supplement with free agency. That's not the way it works, though. But with only having, 1 pick, like you said, or, what do we have? 2, yeah. Sorry, we don't have a 2nd or a 4th, which actually very happy that turned out that way with Laramie. I think I would do that one all over again. But obviously we have a top 10 pick, which, you could look to move and get more picks if the opportunity arises. But certainly I think every offseason, no matter what your picks are, what you have, you're always trying to maximize both the draft and free agency, getting guys that, you might not be able to get in the other one. So if you're going free agency, it's super heavy at one position, maybe you go there, and then the draft, you go elsewhere to fill those needs.
The Commanders so need to trade down from 7 and get more picks in the 2026 NFL Draft. I just don't know that doing that is that realistic, but we'll see. Very mixed results for Adam Peters over his first 2 NFL drafts as Commanders GM. What is most concerning right now is that not a single one of the 5 players who Peters took over the 2nd and 3rd rounds of the 2024 NFL Draft is a clear hit. Interior defensive lineman Johnny Newton, quarterback Mikey Sainristil, tight end Ben Sinnott, offensive lineman Brandon Coleman, receiver Luke McCaffrey. There are things to like about each guy, but no sober, objective analysis would deem any one of those guys a clear hit. Not yet. However, Peters' 2025 NFL draft class had an at least decent first season when you look at 4 of the 5 players in what was a small draft class for the team. Right tackle Josh Connerly Jr., cornerback Trey Amos, receiver and punt returner Jalen Lane, running back Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. Good stuff to varying extents from all of those guys. Connerly really improved as the 2025 regular season went on. How about this? First 8 games, overall grade per Pro Football Focus of just 47.1. Last 9 games, overall grade per Pro Football Focus of 71.6. We on Monday evening had this exchange between Candy Waller of Bowie TV Sports and Dan Quinn, and then we'll hear Adam Peters chime in.
And this is for both of you all. When you take a look at your draft classes, so last year and this year, how well do you think they're doing? Are they right where you think they would be right now, or have they exceeded expectations or not so much?
I can start, Candy, on that. Adam and I visited with a lot of them over the last, 2 weeks or so, and I love some of the trajectory that some of them are on. The belief that we have in them is so strong. And so that's kind of what your first and second year is. It kind of goes up and it goes down. I wish development was just like going straight up. That would be awesome. But what I can say is, like, we've got some really, really good, strong foundation pieces of what we're building that are commanders that play it the right way. And, like, to see them develop and grow, like, that's one of the things I love the most about our team and where they're headed.
Yeah, I would echo that and just say, there's a lot of really young players that still have a great future ahead of them. So there's guys that haven't had as many opportunities as others for whatever reason, and a lot of times it's because there's good players in front of them. But we still have a ton of belief in all of them, and they all have another level they can go to, every single one of them, and they're all willing to do that. So very happy with the young men, and like you said, some have developed faster, some have had their ups and downs, and that's okay. We all do, especially when we're first starting something. But in terms of all that, I have a ton of belief in all those guys.
And as we know, perceptions of NFL draft classes change. So when it comes to those 5 players taken by the Commanders over the second and third rounds of the 2024 NFL draft, we might feel a lot better about those guys a year from now. Hopefully we do. More now on the Washington Commanders as we get into their 2026 offseason. So something that came up during the joint season-ending press conference for General Manager Adam Peters and head coach Dan Quinn on Monday evening was the role that the contract extension saga of receiver Terry McLaurin played in the Commanders going 5-12 in the NFL's 2025 regular season. To review, Terry McLaurin this past July 15th did a 32-plus minute session with reporters during which he sounded off on his frustration with the Commanders and contract extension talks. He, during 2025 Commanders training camp, was a holdout, then a hold-in. He, during 2025 Commanders training camp, asked to be traded. Don't forget that. The Commanders on August 26th announced having signed McLaurin to a contract extension, but once the true details emerged, the extension, as some of us suspected, was revealed to be very much a team-friendly extension and not the win that many people, fans, and media members initially thought that the extension was for McLaurin. And McLaurin then had an injury-plagued 2025 regular season in which he played in just 10 of the Commanders' 17 games due to a twice-injured quadriceps. Now, Terry McLaurin was productive over those 10 games. 38 receptions for 582 yards and 3 touchdowns on 60 targets. He had a yards per reception of 15.32, his best yards per reception since the 2022 regular season. He had a receiving success rate of 61.7, the best of his NFL regular season career. But him missing so much time this season was a killer. The number one injury absence for the Commanders this season was quarterback Jaden Daniels, playing in just 7 of the team's 17 regular season games. But number 2 was Terry McLaurin. We, on Monday evening, had this exchange between Commanders insider John Keim of ESPN and Adam Peters.
Adam, for you, since we haven't talked to you in a little while, I want to go back to the summer with Terry. Given how the season played out for Terry, the injuries, the early struggles and all that, how would you assess how that situation was handled, and how can you apply whatever you learned to future situations?
Yeah, certainly. I think both us and Terry would agree that we would like to get that done a little bit faster. It didn't happen that way. Certainly, there's reasons for that, but ultimately you'd like to get those things done before we did. In terms of where Terry's at, I thought, obviously he got hurt early, but I thought he did a really good job at the end of the year. I was really pleased with where he's at, playing at a really high level right now and going into next year. So really pleased with the end result of the contract. Obviously you'd like to get it done earlier, and I think that's a good lesson too, just engaging in those things a little bit earlier, and hopefully you get to the to the end before we did on this one, and certainly we'll do that moving forward.
So So Adam Peters right there did seem to say that he learned a lesson from the prolonged contract extension saga with Terry McLaurin. Engage in negotiations sooner, although the reporting is that part of why the negotiations took so long is that McLaurin's agent, Buddy Baker, was being unreasonable in what he was asking for. He was asking for top-of-the-market money. Terry McLaurin had been a pillar of durability. McLaurin, over his first 6 NFL seasons, 2019 through 2024, played in 97 of a possible 100 regular season games. He, over the 2021 through 2024 seasons, played in all 68 of Washington's regular season games. Was him missing so much time this season a function of him missing so much time during training camp and the preseason? Was him missing so much time this season a function of him aging, as this was his age 30 season, and we know that receivers tend to fall off in their 30s? Or was him missing so much time this season a function of bad luck in a season in which the Commanders experienced horrendous injury luck? In other words, does McLaurin next season go right back to being the Iron Man who he had been? He was productive when he played this season. It was good to see that. The Commanders' receiving core as a whole, however, was not good. Part of that was the WR1 and WR3 missing so much time. We just talked about Terry McLaurin, but Noah Brown, he in the 2025 regular season played in just 4 of the Commanders' 17 games. So Brown missed 10 consecutive games off being listed as dealing with groin and knee injuries, and he then suffered a season-ending rib injury in the Commanders' 29-21 win at the New York Giants on December 14th. Also, receiver Luke McCaffrey, he suffered a season-ending broken collarbone on his game-opening 19-yard kickoff return in the Commanders' 38-14 loss to the Seattle Seahawks at Northwest Stadium on Sunday Night Football on November 2nd. And receiver Jalen Lane, he suffered a season-ending ankle injury in the Commanders' 29-18 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles at Northwest Stadium on December 20th. The Commanders this season got walloped by injury at receiver, but was the depth good enough, especially considering Noah Brown's extreme injury history? We, on Monday evening, had this exchange between Commanders insider Ben Standig of Last Man Standing on Substack and Adam Peters.
Adam, for you, with regards to the wide receiver room going back to the spring and the summer, obviously in an ideal world, you have Terry, you have Debo, and you have Noah Brown, but you have Terry holding out early on. Noah gets hurt in minicamp, misses all of training camp, and both those guys were out. At what point did you just look at that and think we still have enough depth? Because from the outside seemed to be a wonder as to what would happen, and obviously those guys were out a lot of the year.
Yeah, I think anytime you get your top 2 starting guys, it hurts your depth regardless of how much depth you have. Certainly, we were always looking for help. We're always looking to get every room better. We explored a lot of different ways to get better. We ended up getting Trey Burks, who ended up being a really good player for us down the stretch. But yeah, a lot of it has to do with opportunity and then what the cost is in order to do that. And did not, I think both Noah's and Terry's injuries probably were a little bit longer than we thought they were going to be. And so all that played into it, but certainly, it made it hard for Jaden, with not having the full complement of receivers and some young guys behind him. So I think that's a good lesson for sure. But I think, we did explore a lot of different things. We just didn't always pull the trigger, just depending on what that costs or what, whether it's draft capital, whether it's contract, whatever it is, and I think it's certainly something we'll have to look at down the road.
Yeah, where Adam Peters most went wrong at receiver this season was in counting on Noah Brown as the WR3. Having Noah Brown on the team was fine. Counting on him as the WR3 was not fine. A lot of bad injury luck for the Commanders at receiver this season, but what happened with Brown should have been anticipated, especially with him missing so much of training camp in the preseason due to injury. Remember, he suffered a knee injury on day 2 of the Commanders' mandatory minicamp this past June. So Terry McLaurin was the Commanders' #1 contract extension candidate for the 2025 offseason. Left tackle Laramie Tunsil is the Commanders' #1 contract extension candidate for the 2026 offseason. The team this past March 15th announced having traded a second-round pick in the 2026 NFL Draft a third-round pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, a fourth-round pick in the 2026 NFL Draft, and a seventh-round pick in the 2025 NFL Draft to the Houston Texans for Tunsil, and a fourth-round pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. The Commanders acquired Tunsil with 2 seasons remaining on a 3-year contract extension that he signed with the Texans in March 2023. Tunsil had a strong 2025 season, played in 14 of the Commanders' 17 regular season games, missed the last 3 games due to an oblique injury. Tunsil's overall grade per Pro Football Focus for the 2025 regular season was 84.7. That's excellent. PFF grades are on a scale of 0 to 100. 60 is average. We on Monday evening had this exchange between Commanders insider Tom Schad of the Washington Post and Adam Peters.
Adam, I had a couple questions about Laremy Tunsil, obviously one of the big offseason additions. How would you evaluate kind of the impact that he had on the team? Have you had any talks with him, early talks about a contract extension? And did the situation with Terry kind of inform how you'll go about those potential talks?
Yeah, in terms of the evaluation, I think in his impact on our team, I thought it was really outstanding, both on the field and in the locker room. He's a great leader. I don't think, and he's not really upfront about it, but he's an outstanding leader. He's an outstanding mentor to the other old linemen. He's a really good teammate, and in a lot of ways that you don't really see because he's not looking for attention. But really, just it's been really, really awesome to get to know him and to see how he goes about his business. Incredibly hard worker. And then on the field, I thought he was one of the better left tackles, if not the best in the league. He didn't get recognition for the Pro Bowl, which I was disappointed in, but you look at the metrics, he did a great job. So that's all to say that we've had constant communication. He's self-represented, but he has a team around him that we have constant communication with and had throughout the year. So I think what I can say is we definitely want to get something done with him, and sooner rather than later.
Laremy Tunsil is a franchise left tackle, and while next season will be his age 32 season, high-level offensive linemen do age well. You don't have to worry about age with a franchise left tackle the way that you do with a running back or receiver or cornerback. And that'll do it for you and me for now. Keep the feedback coming. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi. You can email me the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Monday show, episode 1236. We'll have a lot for you on the Washington Commanders. Also on Monday show, discuss the Washington Capitals, the Washington Wizards, and college basketball. The Caps have 2 games this weekend at the Chicago Blackhawks, Friday night at 8, and at the Nashville Predators, Sunday night at 7. The Wizards have 2 games this weekend, home to the New Orleans Pelicans, Friday night at 7, and at the Phoenix Suns, Sunday night at 8. And college basketball this weekend includes Maryland at UCLA, Saturday night at 8. Georgetown home to Seton Hall, Saturday evening at 6. Number 23 Virginia home to Stanford, Saturday afternoon at 2:15. Virginia Tech home to Cal, Saturday afternoon at 4. And George Mason home to VCU, Saturday at noon. Have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you on Monday.
To Ben's point about the style of offense, you were doing more under center lately. Is that something for Jaden? Is that a big deal to help him maybe grow as a quarterback? Is that something you want to incorporate more with him? Does that get a little bit overstated?
Yeah, I have a different philosophy. I mean, we've been more with Josh, obviously, and Marcus. There's more of a comfort level, but I'm not of that where you have to be under a certain amount of times. I just have never bought into that.